Welcome to Grape. Our pick this week is the Decero Cabernet Sauvignon Remolinos Vineyard 2009 vintage from Mendoza, Argentina, and it retails for $26. I'm joined by Stephanie Morton-Small from Finca Decero. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
So I was in Argentina a few weeks ago, and I was so impressed by the diversity that the country has. Because so often people think of Argentina and they think just Malbec. Yeah. But there really is so much that's happening in Argentina, and even within Mendoza, there's so much diversity with respect to the microclimates. Tell us a little bit about this project, because I think even from the name of the winery, it tells so much about the beginnings of where this started from.
Yeah, I mean, it's Swiss family owned, but it was really starting from scratch, from just a bare patch of land. So Decero means from scratch. Our property is just one single vineyard, and it's located at 3,500 feet, so really high elevation. I mean, I think that's what you're referring to, at the right latitude, there's some really good high elevation vineyards. Yeah. And our vineyard is called Remolinos Vineyard, and a Remolinos, for those that don't speak Spanish, is a little whirlwind or a little dust devil. So we get the winds coming down from the mountain, causing this little effect in the vineyard.
Which is great, because it really has a great effect in terms of keeping the grapes dry.
The grapes dry, that's very important. And also the movement of the air actually protects us in the spring from spring frosts. And then when it comes to the vintage, it actually keeps the grapes dry during the summer, because sometimes you just get some light summer rains in Mendoza, so it's really good to have good air movement through the vineyard. So very important to us, our little Remolinos.
Now, with the altitude of the vineyard, you're saying 3,500 feet, which is fantastic. And with that, you must get a great variation between daytime and nighttime temperatures. Yeah,
literally as the sun goes over the mountains to the west of us, literally the temperature just drops, and it can go down easily 20 degrees Celsius between day and nighttime temperatures. It's really striking difference, and I think for us, certainly, we're the highest vineyard in Agrello, this sub-appellation where we're located in Mendoza. And in Agrello, I think with that difference in temperature from between day and nighttime, it really helps us keep this lovely acidity running through the core of our wines. And when you taste Decero wines, whichever one you taste, there's this lovely acidity and almost a freshness to the wines. It's great for pairing with food for that reason as well. You know, it's great to have that acidity.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, you mentioned that. I mean, the Remolinos vineyard, single vineyard.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you're growing Malbec and Cabernet in that same vineyard.
Yeah.
So how are the grapes treated differently?
Well, I think the biggest difference between, say, Malbec and Cabernet is, I mean, Malbec we might pick over a few weeks, whereas Cabernet's kind of fairly easy in the growing season, but Cabernet we have to keep our eye on. It's kind of really fickle. When it comes to the kind of maturation of Cabernet, it kind of goes from underripe into overripe quicker than most varieties. So you have this really narrow window of opportunity, and you've got to be literally tasting the grapes, walking the rows. Matthias and Marcos are literally every day in the vineyard walking the rows and tasting the grapes to decide exactly when to pick the Cabernet, because otherwise you can get the little green notes if you pick too early. You pick too late, and it's really a dense Cabernet that doesn't show the really lovely acidity that we normally have. So we're very careful on that front. That's the picking time is everything in the Cabernet. So
and I think another thing that's very, I wouldn't say necessarily unusual, but I think one of the things that you guys are very particular at is your selection process with the grapes.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's like four, almost religiously, 4 steps of selection. When we're picking at the vine, and this is our team that have been with us for all the years, and they planted the vines themselves. And when they're doing the selection, they're picking at the vine. They'll make a selection when they're actually hand picking. And then at the end of the rows we have small tubs which don't have any compaction between the grapes, and they'll do a second selection between there. And then in the winery, when the grapes come in, say 9:30 in the morning, and when the first grapes come in, there's a first selection table where we select by cluster, and then afterwards there's a second selection table, a kind of 4th step of selection, where we have 8 people, 4 either side, and they're literally going through, and it's berry by berry selection, which is maybe it's reflective of the Swiss ownership and the Swiss vision of quality, should we say, behind the project. So yeah, it's a very dedicated selection process, and then everything's gravity fed actually, into small parcels and a small fermentation tank. So yeah.
Let's go ahead and taste the wine.
Yeah, let's. Always a pleasure.
Even on the nose, you get the freshness.
To me, I think it's got a lovely, it's got a mixture between the cassis that you always associate with Cabernet, but it's got a lovely kind of cherry element as well. And for us, I think as I say, there's no green notes, and nor is it a big Cabernet. It's got the lovely kind of lingering and real lingering length. And I think the tannins are quite soft. It's 40 months in French oak, but the tannin, aren't they so integrated? The oak and the tannins are just
absolutely, and it does have that,
really
that beautiful freshness to it. And I think so often people can think of Cabernet as being a very heavy wine, and this, although it has a lot of flavor to it, it still has that beautiful freshness. Almost begs you to take another taste after you.
I think it begs and begs and begs. Yeah, absolutely. And I think for that, I mean, as I said before, I mean, for that reason, I think wines with good acidity, no matter what variety, if you can pick wines with relatively good acidity, I think they're the wines to pair with food. I mean, they're the ones that really, they don't overwhelm the food, and they're not trying to compete with the food. If a wine's too rich, sometimes it's kind of pervades the kind of.
Sure, absolutely.
There's a bit of a fight going on there.
So
but this is lovely.
What food pairings would you recommend with this?
Cabernet. With Cabernet, I love a good steak with Cabernet. Carnivorous myself, but I love a good steak with Cabernet. Given the lovely acidity in this Cabernet in particular, Decero Cabernet, I would pick even a cut of steak that has more fat marbled through it. So maybe a ribeye or something like that, where the acidity cuts through the layering of the fat. And I think that you'll get the great flavors coming out with the acidity playing with the different levels of fat. So I think it's great for steak. I mean, Cabernet and steak is like a beautiful match. And they say Malbec and steak, of course that's true, but Cabernet is a great match. And you know, when you look at Argentina right now, I mean, Malbec's been such a thing for so long, but Cabernet is really the rising star. And I think that partly is because they love their great kind of grass-fed cattle down there, and good steak with Cabernet goes well too.
And I think that's something in common that Argentina has with Alberta, and that's a great quality beef.
There we go. You have great bison here, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So our pick again is the Decero Cabernet Sauvignon Remolinos Vineyard 2009 vintage from Mendoza, Argentina, and a retail for $26. Cheers. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much. Thanks.